Hi, everyone, and welcome to another episode of Ancient Warfare Answers with me, Murray, your weekly 10-minute break from reality to think about ancient warfare. What better thing is there to do on a weekly basis than think about ancient warfare? That's certainly my life. Anyway, what I do here, of course, is I attempt to answer a question sent in by you, the viewer, the listener, or indeed the reader. You can get to me in a variety of ways. You can send me a postcard. You can comment on a previous video or podcast. You can just send us an email, AWA@caravanserai.publishers.com. You can even ask the question of the wrong person, and they generally send it to me. So that's all fine. I will end up with the question. And once I've found the question, I will attempt to answer it. So question today is from Don Antonius. Really appreciate your dedication and source-based approach. Thank you, Don Antonius. Was there an inspiring role of elite units in ancient armies? Do we have accounts of battles where elite units, not necessarily veterans, like the Roman cataphracts, Carthage's sacred band, etc., supposedly lifted the spirits to fight on or evidently change the odds? Yes. Now, interestingly, we did an entire issue of the magazine on elite units. There's a issue in terms of what does elite mean. And so in the ancient sources, there's two terms. There's epilectoi and logades, which mean picked and selected. Now, mostly in our sources, though, translations of those two terms are synonymous with one another. They may have originally meant something different. If you were epilectoi or logades, not necessarily the same thing, but we've lost what differentiation there might have been. But these are picked members for particular units, namely the Hippace of the Spartan kings and things like that, and the other 300s and other units that we have. Of course, Xenophon describes a competition for entry into the Hippace of the Spartan kings. So we're not sure that in that sense, how the selection process goes, or what the criteria are. For instance, the 300 at Thermopylae might have been chosen from fathers with sons. There's not really enough in the Greek to actually allow that, but that seems to be what we think. So it's not even a prowess selection process. It's have you got a lineage? Have you secured your heir? So that's that. So it's not elite in the sense of they are better trained, better equipped, Navy SEALs, Green Berets, Red Berets, all the others, GSG-9, blah, blah, blah. They are selected because of a whole variety of criteria, which do include prowess on occasion. So in that sense, they are elite because they are marked out as different, whether they be a bodyguard or whether they be selected for a particular mission or a particular battlefield role in a particular instance. So there are lots of those. In that sense, we would assume that they would be better at fighting than their compatriots, but that's not necessarily the case. Of course, one of the things about shield wall warfare is being a better shield wall fighter doesn't necessarily mean you're a better individual fencer. You may be a better man in rank than someone who's a better fighter individually. So that's one thing. Now, having said that they're not better trained, there are elites within Greek warfare and some extent Roman warfare where they do seem to have better training, more training that they're paid for by the state, such as the sacred band at Thebes. In Sparta, for instance, there doesn't seem to be any specific training for the Hippace, and it's much more of a status, and the level of training of all of the Spartan homoioi seems to be at the same level. Whereas when you get to the Hippace, and there's also evidence, and I've written about it in the magazine, about an Athenian Hippace of 300 hoplites. And so that's another one which seems to be a selected unit. We don't learn anything about them being especially trained, but they certainly seem to be marked out for special missions in several battles, which is like, oh, okay, so who are you choosing? So now coming down to, do they inspire? Probably they inspire people to want to join their ranks because they are marked out as special. They are, you're specially chosen, you're specially selected, you are different from your compatriots who are all the same. And so there is a competition to be one of them. So that's one point of inspiration. In terms of battlefield inspiration, we do have that. Now, obviously, in many cases, our evidence is not particularly helpful. So, for instance, at the Battle of Delium in 324 BC, you've got 300, Diodorus calls them charioteers and footmen, who make up the front rank of the Boeotian army. Now, when we leap forward to the Battle of Leuctra in 371 BC, you've got another 300 sacred band, not in Xenophon, but in Diodorus and other accounts. One argument is that they are the front rank. One argument is that they are on the extreme left flank in a block, but that they lead the charge, and that they lead the charge also at the Battle of Mantinea in 362 BC. And so, in a way, that battlefield role is a way of them showing the way. They lead the charge. They take the brunt of the enemy's attack, and they, therefore, are doing the most to face danger, and that you follow behind them as, other hoplites. And so that's an inspiring battlefield role. You've also got, in a similar way, but in the Spartan sense, so in Brasidas is at Amphipolis, he selects 150 men to charge into the flank of the marching Athenian army. And, we're told that the Athenians have 1,200 men there. Brasidas has 150 for this special mission, and then the rest of the army is inside the gates of Amphipolis. He charges with his 150 into the right flank of the Athenians who are marching back to the port, and they are spectacularly successful. So we're told that only 7 die, including Brasidas himself, but they probably are attacking about 600 Athenians. So that 150 Spartans attacking 600 Athenians is absolutely inspiring. And of course, the rest of the Spartan army charges out and catches up with the delayed Athenian right wing and wreaks havoc. And we're told they lose, is it 50% casualties? 600 dead out of 1,200? Crazy. Anyway, including Cleon. Now, the interesting thing with those is that they are inspiring not only in the moment, but of course they're inspiring, and they're inspiring millennia later when we talk about these stories and start, inspired by deeds of daring do in ancient history. So there's that aspect to it, and there's a Roman one as well. You've got the 300 at one of the battles in the first Punic War, and they're inspiring in a different way. What you've got in that account is you have a tribune, Calpurnius, who basically leads a 300 at the Battle of Camarina in 364. Is it 364? Oh, 364 BC? 361 BC. Oh, I got the date wrong. 258, not even close, Mary. The Battle of Camarina in 258 BC. He sees that the Roman army is going to be ambushed and cut off. He leads a 300 to a small hill. It's called a wart in one of the sources. And he allows the rest of the army to escape. So it's inspiring in the sacrificial sense. And he's compared to both Leonidas, and so, that inspiring sacrifice is part of the inspiration as well. So there's several battles where you get that kind of inspiration. There are others where you've got individual exploits that seem to be inspiring as well. And so it's not quite the same as see them do great deeds and emulate them on the battlefield. For instance, in the current issue of the magazine, we're looking at the Battle of Lechaeum, where the Peltas, led by Iphicrates, are attacking the Spartan Mora, and they attack and retreat before the hoplites can reach them. They send out the youngest to run after them, and they stay away from them. And it's not until the very end of that battle that the Athenian hoplites are inspired to actually come and join the battle. Similarly, at the Battle of Sphacteria, the Athenian hoplites stay out of the battle until the Spartan force has been whittled down by Psiloi and light-armed troops. So, in that sense, inspiration isn't probably the right term. And there's also a class distinction there, of course, of being inspired by, poorer, lesser armed, lesser types of fighter isn't something that your hoplite class is ever going to admit to. So there's all sorts of inspirations going on in terms of conduct, sacrifice, patriotism to your city-state or your country, for lack of a better term. So there's all sorts of things like that. And of course, there's also the idea of conduct and correct conduct being inspirational for young men to want to emulate that. There's a comment of Leonidas's in Plutarch, which is that the poetry of Tyrtaeus is great for inspiring young men. So they would recite it on march. So there's all sorts of inspiration going on there, but not, I don't think, specifically the kind that you're asking about, that in a battlefield moment, the inspiration happens. So, Don Antonius, I hope that answers your question. You can join me again for another episode of Ancient Warfare Answers. You can, of course, join us on the big podcast, which happens once a month. You can even listen to the Ancient History podcast now. And of course, you can back us on Patreon. And at one of 3 different levels, we've got Legionary, Optio, and Centurion. At $1, $5, and $10 a month, you get a copy of the magazine digitally at Optio level, and you get a physical print copy of the magazine at not Legionary, at Centurion level. There we go. Thanks very much. Join me again for another episode of Ancient Warfare Answers. Thanks. Bye.